Ben Smith here. Have you ever had one of those weeks where you were busy, you were constantly moving, you had very little time to sit down and rest and reflect, and yet at the end of the week, looking back on all that you had been busy about, you had a hard time pointing to being actually productive, or you had a hard time pointing to the things that you actually accomplished, or even worse, you did not accomplish the things that you wanted to do. Well, that's been my week this week, and I wanted to step on just a moment today and drop a quick podcast episode to catch you up, explain to you what's happening, and talk about where we're going next week. So this past week, my church had a major water leak in our worship building from a leak in our roof. And Saturday night, we spent significant time trying to vacuum it up and mitigate the issues, only to realize late in the evening that our efforts were futile, at which time we then moved our attention to moving or setting up our fellowship hall so that our church could worship on Sunday morning there. When we moved to the fellowship hall, that was great. God bless that time of worship. It really was a sweet time. But that also meant that we were away from our normal equipment and were not able to record the service, either video or audio. And so that sermon, which was the last sermon in the series I was doing on the church defined, it was from Ephesians chapter 1, talking about the church's hope, the work of the Holy Spirit in the life of the church, and the hope of eternity with God in heaven. That sermon's going to be like old-fashioned sermons in that the only way you could have heard it was to be in the room. And so there's no audio or video recording of it. Thus, there's no audio podcast this week of that sermon. The rest of the week was spent with a lot of work trying to mitigate, fix, recover from that leak. And in addition to being out of town 2 days for some meetings. And so throughout the week, I have been working on a blog post about weddings and how weddings have moved away from gospel events to just secular social events. Really hope to get that blog post out this week, but time frankly just got away with other things this week, and so that'll have to come next week. I had fully hoped to maybe pull a sermon out of the audio archives and post that this week, but even just prepping for that and getting that ready, I didn't have time for. And at this point, as the week has come to an end, I still have some work to do to prepare for Sunday morning and needed to give my full attention to that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I thought I'd just drop a podcast today and let you know where we are. I do hope next week to get that blog post out about weddings. I'm actually working on one as well about funerals and why they're important and why you should have one. And I hope those two related articles, weddings and funerals, one of the two big events in the life of the church, that those things will be helpful for you. And for those of you who are listening regularly to me, I hope that you will be blessed by my Easter series that I'm beginning this coming Sunday with out of the Gospel of John, and I'll be beginning in chapter 17. One of the things that has been a great blessing this week to behold and to witness is how different folks use their talents and gifts in different ways. And so as our church has been recovering, I've seen our finance folks come together to work out financing. I've seen our building maintenance folks work to mitigate the problem and fix the issue and think about how to move forward. And then I've also seen how the guys that do audio and video and technology type work, they have worked very, very hard this week to move equipment, reset up equipment, rescue equipment from some of the damaged areas. And I hope, we're planning on being able to do video recording and audio recording this Sunday from our fellowship hall. So I'm very hopeful and expectant that next week I'll be able to post a audio podcast of the sermon. If you haven't already done so, let me encourage you to subscribe to my email mailing list. You can find a link to subscribe at the top of most every page on my website. If you subscribe, I'll send you just one email a week, and it includes links to that week's blog post and podcast. And then if you want to get the Superstar Award for connecting to content, if you are a regular podcast listener and you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to subscribe to my podcast through your favorite podcast app. Now, you can get this audio from my website, which I'm happy for you to do, but one of the nice things about subscribing in a podcast app is as soon as I publish an episode, it will automatically download to your device, whether phone or computer. My podcast is available in most of the major ones, so Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Audio, and there's a couple of others. You can find links to those at the top of each podcast page on my website. I actually do two. One is my sermon podcast, which you're probably most familiar with, and then the second one is what I call sermon shorts, and those are short clips, 5 minutes or less of sermons that I post. You'll find both of those on my website, and you'll find links to subscribe to your favorite podcast app at the top of those. I hope you've had a great week, and I hope next week is even greater, and that the Lord is continuing to move in your life and encourage you, and I look forward to bringing another sermon to you next week. God bless. Thank you for listening to All for the Kingdom, a weekly podcast of my preaching ministry. For more sermons, blog posts, and other related content, go to bensmithsenior.org. That's bensmithsr.org. I am the pastor of Central Baptist Church in Waycross, Georgia. I would love for you to join us this coming Sunday at 201 Ava Street here in Waycross. Our morning services begin at 10:30 a.m. For more information about Central Baptist, go to cbcwaycross.org. Again, thank you for listening, and until the Lord returns, let us live each moment all for the King and all for the kingdom.